What if silence could be your greatest strength? Not the kind of silence that feels awkward or uncertain, but the kind that radiates power, presence, and unshakable calm. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most revered Stoic thinkers, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that strength, it often begins with stillness. Imagine walking into a room and saying nothing, yet commanding attention simply because of the way you hold yourself. It's not magic, it's mastery. Today, we're diving into the Stoic secrets of silence, how detachment, emotional resilience, and a deep sense of presence can transform the way others see you, even when you're not saying a word. By the end of this video, you'll understand why silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a tool for influence, a statement of control, and a reflection of inner strength. So let's explore how you can harness this timeless Stoic principle to stand out, even when you're standing still. Silence is not emptiness, it's a space for mastery. This is a truth the Stoics understood deeply. For them, silence wasn't just the absence of words, it was a deliberate choice, a tool for self-discipline, and a way to avoid the chaos of unnecessary conflict. Think about it, how often do we speak without thinking, only to regret it later? The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that mastering our words is one of the most powerful forms of self-control. He believed that what we choose not to say often reveals more about our character than what we do say. Silence, in this sense, becomes a mirror of our inner strength. Take Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic leaders. As a Roman emperor, he faced constant pressure to react, to retaliate, to assert his authority. Yet he often chose silence. In moments of tension or provocation, his restraint spoke louder than any command. By staying silent, he demonstrated control over his emotions and maintained clarity in his decisions. This wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. His silence became a shield, protecting him from distractions and allowing him to lead with purpose. Now, let's bring this closer to home. Can you think of a time when staying silent might have served you better? Maybe it was during an argument when words felt like weapons, or in a moment of frustration when speaking out would have only escalated the situation. Silence, when used intentionally, can de-escalate tension, create space for reflection, and even command respect. It's not about suppressing your voice, it's about choosing when to use it. The Stoics remind us that silence is a form of power. It's not passive, it's active. It's a way to reclaim control over your mind and your environment. The next time you're tempted to react impulsively, consider the strength in stillness. What could you gain by simply pausing, breathing, and choosing not to engage? Silence, after all, is not empty, it's full of possibility. Silence isn't just about not speaking, it's about creating space between yourself and the noise of the world. This is where the Stoic practice of cognitive detachment comes into play. Cognitive detachment is the art of separating your inner peace from the opinions, judgments, and reactions of others. It's about recognizing that while you can't control what others think or say, you can control how you respond, or whether you respond at all. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most profound thinkers, put it this way: "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant is that much of our distress comes from overthinking how others perceive us. We imagine their judgments, we replay their criticisms in our minds, and we let their words dictate our emotions. But here's the truth: their opinions are not your reality. By practicing cognitive detachment, you can step back, observe their words for what they are, external noise, and choose not to let them disturb your calm. Think about a modern scenario. You're at work and a colleague criticizes your ideas in front of others. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to argue, or to prove them wrong. But what if instead you stayed silent, not out of fear or defeat, but out of strength? What if you chose to detach from their criticism, seeing it as their perspective rather than a reflection of your worth? That silence, that refusal to engage, becomes a powerful statement. It says, your opinion doesn't define me. This kind of detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your inner peace than you do about winning every argument or pleasing every person. It's a reminder that your value isn't tied to what others think of you. So, how can you apply this in your own life? Start by noticing when you feel the urge to react to criticism or judgment. Pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this person's opinion something I need to carry with me? Over time, this practice of stepping back, of choosing silence over reaction, will help you maintain composure in even the most emotionally charged situations. It's not about avoiding conflict, it's about rising above it. And here's the beauty of it: when you stop reacting, people notice. They can't ignore the quiet confidence that comes from someone who refuses to be swayed by their judgments. That's the power of cognitive detachment. It's not just a Stoic secret, it's a way of living that transforms how you navigate the world. What does it mean to truly be present? It's more than just being physically in a room or nodding along to a conversation. Being present is about fully immersing yourself in the moment, free from distractions, judgments, or the constant pull of past regrets or future anxieties. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that true power lies in focusing on what's happening right now, not what could have been or what might be. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it simply: we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. And often, that response begins with silence, a quiet, intentional presence that speaks louder than words. Think about it. When you're in a room with someone who isn't just talking but truly listening, who isn't fidgeting or glancing at their phone but is fully engaged, doesn't that command your attention? That's the power of presence. It's not about dominating a conversation or filling the air with noise. It's about being so grounded in the moment that your very stillness becomes magnetic. Take, for example, a leader who walks into a room and doesn't say a word. Their calm demeanor, their ability to listen before they speak, their quiet confidence, it draws people in. That's presence in action. But how do you cultivate this kind of presence in your own life? Start by practicing awareness. Notice when your mind starts to wander, when you're tempted to interrupt, or when you're more focused on what you'll say next than on what's being said to you. Bring yourself back to the moment. Focus on what's within your control, your attention, your breath, your posture. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a space where presence can grow. So, the next time you find yourself in a conversation, try this. Pause, listen, be fully there. You might be surprised at how much more you notice and how much more others notice you. Silence is more than the absence of words. It's a shield, a deliberate choice to protect your energy and peace. The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw silence not as weakness but as a powerful tool to deflect negativity and chaos. When you refuse to engage with toxic people or situations, you're not avoiding conflict, you're preserving your inner calm. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." Think about that for a moment. How often do we waste energy reacting to things that, in the grand scheme, don't truly matter? Take something as modern as online trolls. You've probably seen them, people who thrive on stirring up drama, leaving comments designed to provoke. The instinct might be to fire back, to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. But here's the Stoic approach: silence. By not engaging, you deny them the reaction they're seeking. You take away their power. Instead of letting their words drain you, you shield yourself, preserving your focus for what truly matters. This isn't just about online interactions either. Think about that coworker who always seems to stir up office gossip, or that family member who thrives on drama. Silence in these moments isn't passive, it's strategic. It's a way of saying, I won't let this disrupt my peace. And the beauty of it is, the more you practice this, the more you realize how much unnecessary stress you've been carrying. So take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could silence serve as your shield? Where are you spending energy on things or people that don't deserve it? The Stoics remind us that silence isn't about ignoring the world. It's about choosing where to place your attention. And when you use it well, it becomes one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal. Picture this: a serene, glassy lake surrounded by the chaos of a roaring thunderstorm. While the winds howl and the rain lashes down, the lake remains unshaken, its surface smooth and undisturbed. There's something almost magnetic about that kind of stillness, isn't there? It commands attention not through noise or force, but through its quiet, unwavering presence. This is the power of silence, a power that can transform how others perceive and respond to you. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote about the allure of quiet confidence. He believed that those who speak less and observe more often become the most intriguing figures in any room. It's not about being aloof or disengaged. It's about embodying a sense of inner calm that radiates outward. When you're still, when you're silent, you create an aura of mystery. People can't help but wonder what's going on beneath the surface. They're drawn to you because your stillness suggests depth, resilience, and control. Think about someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late Supreme Court Justice. She wasn't known for loud speeches or dramatic gestures. Instead, her quiet authority spoke volumes. Her measured words, her composed demeanor, and her ability to remain steadfast in the face of adversity made her a figure of immense respect. People didn't just listen to her because of her title. They listened because her stillness conveyed strength and wisdom. Now consider how this applies to your own life. When was the last time you let silence do the talking? In a world that often rewards noise, louder voices, faster responses, constant activity, stillness can feel counterintuitive. But what if you embraced it? What if, instead of rushing to fill every pause or defend every opinion, you allowed yourself to simply be? This isn't about becoming invisible. It's about becoming someone others can't ignore. Stillness isn't just about physical quiet. It's about mental and emotional calm as well. It's about resisting the urge to react impulsively, to let your emotions dictate your actions. When you cultivate this kind of stillness, you send a powerful message that you are in control, that you are grounded, and that you are someone worth paying attention to. So how can you start embodying this in your daily life? Begin with small moments. The next time you're in a heated conversation, pause before responding. Instead of jumping in with your thoughts, take a breath and listen. Notice how people lean in, how they begin to mirror your calm. Over time, these small acts of stillness will build into a presence that others can't help but respect. It's not about being silent all the time. It's about choosing when to speak and when to let your quiet confidence speak for you. Stillness, when practiced intentionally, becomes a kind of superpower. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of something far greater: self-assurance, clarity, and an unshakable sense of who you are. And in a world that's always moving, always shouting, that kind of presence is impossible to ignore. Silence is more than just the absence of words. It's a powerful tool for building emotional resilience. When we pause before responding, we create a space between stimulus and reaction, a moment to gather our thoughts and choose our actions deliberately. This is where silence becomes transformative. As Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That simple pause, that act of listening instead of immediately reacting, can be the difference between a measured response and an impulsive outburst that we later regret. Consider the story of Maria, a manager at a busy firm. During a heated team meeting, a colleague openly criticized her leadership style in front of everyone. Her first instinct was to defend herself, to fire back with sharp words, but instead she chose silence. She took a deep breath, let the tension settle, and simply listened. That moment of quiet gave her the clarity to respond with grace. She acknowledged the feedback, thanked her colleague for their honesty, and proposed a solution to address the concerns. By not reacting impulsively, Maria not only de-escalated the situation but also earned the respect of her team. Her silence became a shield, protecting her from emotional turbulence and allowing her to respond with wisdom rather than anger. This is the essence of emotional resilience through silence. It's not about suppressing your emotions or avoiding conflict. It's about giving yourself the time to process, to understand, and to act from a place of strength rather than impulse. When we pause, we regain control over our emotions, and that control is what builds resilience over time. Think about it. How often have you said or done something in the heat of the moment that you later wished you could take back? Silence gives us the opportunity to avoid those regrets. It's a practice, a skill that grows stronger with use. So, how can you start building this kind of resilience in your own life? The next time you find yourself in a tense situation, try this. Take a breath, count to 3, and let the silence do the work. Notice how it changes the dynamic, how it gives you the space to think clearly and respond thoughtfully. What might feel uncomfortable at first will soon become a source of strength. Silence isn't weakness, it's the quiet power that helps us navigate life's challenges with dignity and composure. There's a quiet power in not reacting immediately, a power the Stoics understood deeply. They called it the Stoic Pause, a moment of deliberate silence before responding to any situation, especially one that triggers strong emotions. It's not about suppressing your feelings or ignoring what's happening. Instead, it's about giving yourself just enough time to step back, breathe, and choose how you want to respond rather than being swept away by impulse. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This idea is at the heart of the Stoic Pause. It's a reminder that while we can't control what happens around us, we can always control how we respond to it. Picture this, you're in the middle of a heated argument. Voices are raised, emotions are running high, and every instinct is telling you to fire back with a quick retort. But what if, instead of reacting immediately, you took just a few seconds to pause? That moment of silence can change everything. It gives you the chance to separate yourself from the heat of the moment and respond with clarity and purpose, rather than anger or defensiveness. This is the Stoic Pause in action, a small but powerful tool for maintaining self-control and composure, even when the world around you feels chaotic. So, how can you put this into practice? Start small. The next time you find yourself in a challenging situation, whether it's a disagreement, a stressful moment at work, or even just a frustrating conversation, try this. Take a deep breath and count to 3 before you respond. That brief pause might feel awkward at first, but over time, it can become a habit that transforms how you handle conflict and stress. It's not about winning the argument or proving a point. It's about reclaiming your power to choose how you show up in the world. Why not give it a try? The next time you're faced with a tough moment, pause, breathe, and see what happens. You might be surprised by the strength you find in that silence. Silence, often overlooked in a world filled with noise, is more than just the absence of sound. It's a gateway to self-mastery. The Stoics understood this deeply. For them, silence wasn't merely a tool for avoiding unnecessary chatter. It was a practice for cultivating inner peace and clarity. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "The more you say, the less people remember. The fewer the words, the greater the profit." In other words, wisdom isn't found in constant speaking but in deliberate silence. When we choose silence, we give ourselves the space to observe, to reflect, and to truly understand our thoughts and emotions. This act of restraint becomes a form of self-discipline, a way to take control of our impulses and reactions. Think about it. How often do we speak without thinking, react without considering the consequences, or fill every moment with noise just to avoid confronting our own minds? Silence, when practiced intentionally, helps us break this cycle. It allows us to step back, to see ourselves more clearly, and to respond to life's challenges with poise rather than impulsivity. This is the essence of self-mastery, the ability to govern your inner world before trying to navigate the external one. A simple daily practice can help you tap into this power. Try setting aside just 5 minutes each day for quiet reflection. Find a quiet space, sit comfortably, and let your mind settle. You don't need to meditate in the traditional sense, just focus on being present and observing your thoughts without judgment. Over time, this practice can deepen your self-awareness, helping you recognize patterns in your behavior and emotions that might otherwise go unnoticed. As you grow more comfortable with silence, you'll likely find that it becomes a source of strength, a way to center yourself amidst life's chaos. The Stoics believed that mastering silence was inseparable from mastering oneself. By embracing moments of stillness, you not only gain clarity but also cultivate a sense of calm that can carry you through even the most turbulent situations. It's not about shutting out the world, but about creating a space where you can truly listen to yourself, to others, and to the wisdom that often gets drowned out by the noise. So take a moment today to sit in silence. You might be surprised at what you discover. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a language all its own. When wielded with intention, it can radiate authority and confidence in ways that words often fail to. Think about it. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone speaks less, yet somehow commands more attention? That's the unspoken power of silence at work. The Stoics, masters of self-discipline, understood this deeply. They believed that restraint and composure were not signs of weakness but markers of true strength. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that silence is not passive. It's a deliberate act of self-control and presence. Take, for example, a leader who knows when to hold their tongue. Imagine a high-stakes meeting where tensions are running high. Instead of jumping into the fray with heated arguments, they remain calm, letting others exhaust themselves in the noise. Their quiet demeanor becomes a magnet for attention, and when they do speak, their words carry weight because they've chosen them carefully. This kind of silence isn't about avoiding conflict, it's about asserting authority through poise and thoughtfulness. It's about showing that you don't need to shout to be heard. Now, consider how this applies to your own life. When was the last time you allowed silence to work in your favor? Maybe it's in a disagreement where staying quiet could de-escalate the situation, or in a moment where your calm presence could inspire trust. Silence, when used strategically, can shift the energy of any interaction. It can make you appear more confident, more in control, and more worthy of respect. So, the next time you feel the urge to fill the air with words, pause. Let the silence speak for you. You might be surprised at how much louder it can be. Silence in conflict is one of the most powerful tools we often overlook. When tensions rise and emotions flare, our instinct is often to fight back, to defend ourselves, or to prove a point. But what if the most effective response wasn't to speak at all? The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw silence not as weakness but as a deliberate choice, a way to rise above the chaos and refuse to engage in battles that don't truly matter. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic thinkers, put it this way: Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. In other words, by refusing to engage in every argument, you reclaim your peace and refuse to let others dictate your emotional state. Imagine this: you're in a heated discussion with someone. Voices are raised and it feels like the conversation is spiraling out of control. Instead of matching their intensity, you pause, you take a deep breath and you stay silent. What happens next? Often, the other person's anger begins to lose its fuel. Without your words to feed the fire, the tension starts to dissipate. Silence creates a space, a moment for both of you to step back, breathe, and reconsider. It's not about letting the other person win. It's about choosing peace over the need to be right. There's a story about a man who was once caught in a bitter argument with a colleague. The colleague was shouting, hurling accusations, and trying to provoke a reaction. But instead of responding, the man simply listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself, didn't retaliate. And after a few minutes, the colleague's anger began to fade. By the end of the conversation, the colleague apologized, admitting they had overreacted. Silence had de-escalated the situation, creating room for understanding and resolution. This isn't about suppressing your voice or avoiding important conversations. It's about recognizing which battles are worth fighting and which ones only drain your energy. The Stoics believed that most conflicts are born from ego, the need to prove ourselves, to be seen as right, or to assert dominance. But when we choose silence, we step out of that cycle. We refuse to let our emotions dictate our actions, and in doing so, we gain control over the situation. Think about a recent conflict in your own life. How might it have unfolded differently if you had chosen silence instead of engaging? Could it have created space for clarity, for empathy, or even for reconciliation? Silence isn't passive, it's a deliberate, powerful act. It's a way to rise above the noise, to preserve your peace, and to show that you're strong enough to choose understanding over winning. In the face of conflict, sometimes the loudest statement you can make is saying nothing at all. There's a quiet strength in saying less, a kind of power that words alone can't always achieve. Think about it: when someone speaks endlessly, filling every silence with noise, how often do their words truly hold weight? The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that speaking should never be an automatic reflex but a deliberate choice. As Seneca once wisely said, "Speak only when your words are more valuable than silence." This wasn't just about being quiet for the sake of it, it was about ensuring that when you did speak, your words carried meaning, intention, and purpose. Let's take a moment to reflect on the impact of silence. Imagine a room full of people, everyone talking over each other, each voice competing to be heard. Then someone steps forward, waits for the noise to settle, and speaks only a few words, calm, measured, and precise. That person immediately commands attention, not because they're the loudest, but because they've chosen to speak with care. Their silence before speaking creates a kind of gravity, pulling everyone in. This is the essence of Stoic communication, valuing quality over quantity. History gives us countless examples of leaders and thinkers who mastered this art. Take Marcus Aurelius, for instance. As a Roman emperor, he could have easily filled his days with grand speeches and declarations. Yet he chose to lead by example, often speaking only when it was necessary to guide or inspire. His restraint wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a display of immense strength. By choosing his words carefully, he earned respect and trust, not just from his people but from history itself. His silence spoke volumes, and his words, when they came, carried the weight of wisdom. Now let's turn the lens on ourselves. How often do we find ourselves speaking just to fill the void, to avoid awkwardness, or to prove a point? What if instead we paused and asked ourselves, is this worth saying? By doing so, we not only give our words more power, but also cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness. The next time you're in a conversation, try this small shift. Listen more, speak less, and when you do speak, let your words reflect something meaningful. You might be surprised at how much more impact you have when you choose silence as your ally. This isn't about never speaking up, it's about understanding the balance between words and silence. The Stoics remind us that every word we utter is a reflection of our inner state. When we speak thoughtfully, we show respect not just for others but for ourselves. So, the next time you feel the urge to fill the air with noise, remember, silence isn't empty. It's full of potential, waiting for the right moment to transform into something truly powerful. Silence has a unique power to cut through the noise, not just the noise around us, but the chaos within. When we step away from the constant distractions of modern life, we create space to see things as they truly are. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That simple statement holds a profound truth. Clarity begins with quiet introspection. Imagine your mind as a pool of water. When it's stirred by external pressures, emotions, or endless to-do lists, the water becomes murky, making it hard to see what lies beneath. But when you allow yourself to sit in silence, even for a few moments, the sediment settles, the water clears, and suddenly you can see the bottom. That's what silence does for your thoughts. It gives you the clarity to understand your priorities, your values, and your next steps. The Stoics practiced this through reflection and meditation. They didn't see silence as emptiness, but as a tool for self-discovery. Every day, they would take time to step back from the busyness of life, sit in stillness, and reflect on their actions, their choices, and their character. This wasn't about overthinking or dwelling on what went wrong. It was about observing without judgment, learning from the past, and preparing for the future with a calm and focused mind. Here's a simple exercise you can try. Set aside 10 minutes today to sit in silence with a journal. Don't worry about writing perfectly or filling pages, just let your thoughts flow. Ask yourself, what's weighing on my mind right now? What do I truly want to focus on? Write down whatever comes up, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. You might be surprised by what surfaces when you give yourself the gift of quiet. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's an invitation to reconnect with yourself. It's a chance to step out of the whirlwind of daily life and gain perspective. When you embrace silence, even for a short time, you create a space where clarity can emerge. And with that clarity, you'll find it easier to make decisions, stay grounded, and move forward with purpose. So, what's one thing you could gain clarity on today if you allowed yourself a moment of silence? The answer might be closer than you think. Silence isn't just about withholding words, it's about creating space to truly see and understand the world around you. Think about it. When you stop talking, you open yourself up to observe in a way that words often cloud. This is where the Stoic practice of observation comes into play. The Stoics believed that silence was a tool not just for self-control, but for gaining deeper insight into others and the world. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic philosophers, once said, "To bear in silence is to be strong. To listen is to be wise," and there's so much truth in that. When you listen, when you observe without judgment, you're not just being passive. You're actively engaging with the world in a way that fosters growth and understanding. Imagine being in a heated conversation where emotions are running high. Instead of jumping in with your own thoughts or defenses, you choose to stay silent. In that moment, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're giving yourself the chance to truly see the other person. What are they really saying? What's driving their emotions? By observing, you gain clarity. You might notice patterns in their behavior or even uncover something about yourself. This is the power of the Stoic observer, to step back, to watch, and to learn without the need to react. Here's an example. Picture a leader in a meeting. Instead of dominating the conversation, they sit back and listen. They notice how their team interacts, who speaks up, who holds back, and what dynamics are at play. Through this observation, they gain insights that no amount of talking could reveal. They might discover untapped potential in someone who's been overlooked, or identify a recurring issue that needs addressing. This kind of observation isn't passive, it's strategic. It's about gathering information to make better decisions and foster deeper connections. So, how can you apply this in your own life? Start by asking yourself, how often do I truly observe when I'm silent? Am I using that silence to understand, or am I just waiting for my turn to speak? The next time you're in a conversation, try this experiment. Stay quiet, not out of indifference, but out of curiosity. Pay attention to the details, the tone of someone's voice, the way they express themselves, even the pauses between their words. You might be surprised at what you learn, not just about them, but about yourself. Because when you observe without judgment, you create space for growth, for connection, and for wisdom. And isn't that what silence is truly about? Silence is not just the absence of sound, it's a powerful tool for setting boundaries and preserving your energy. Think about it. When you choose silence, you're not being passive. You're actively deciding what deserves your attention and what doesn't. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant was that much of our turmoil comes from over-explaining, overthinking, or overreacting to situations that don't truly require our energy. Silence allows you to step back, guard your peace, and avoid giving others the power to disturb your tranquility. Imagine someone asks you for a favor that you simply don't have the capacity to take on. Instead of launching into a long explanation or apology, you simply say, "No, I can't do that right now." No excuses, no guilt, just a clear boundary. That's the power of silence in action. It communicates strength, not weakness. It tells the world, I value my time and energy enough to protect them. This isn't about shutting people out or being cold. It's about creating space for what truly matters. When you use silence to set boundaries, you're not just saying no to others, you're saying yes to yourself. You're prioritizing your mental and emotional well-being, which is something the Stoics would absolutely applaud. So take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could silence help you establish stronger boundaries? Are there conversations, relationships, or situations where saying less or saying nothing at all could actually give you more peace? Sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is simply let your silence speak for you. There's a profound truth in the idea that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Silence has a unique eloquence, a way of speaking volumes without uttering a single word. In the Stoic tradition, silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's a deliberate choice, a form of communication that can convey strength, clarity, and understanding far better than words ever could. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This simple observation cuts to the heart of why silence is so powerful. It's not about withholding or hiding. It's about creating space for thought, for observation, for connection. When you choose silence, you're not just refraining from speaking, you're actively listening, observing, and responding to the world around you in a way that words often can't match. Think about a moment in your own life when silence spoke louder than words. Maybe it was a quiet gesture of support during a difficult time, or a shared pause that communicated more than any conversation could. Silence has a way of cutting through the noise, of reaching people on a deeper level. It's in those unspoken moments that understanding often flourishes. Imagine standing in a crowded room where everyone is talking, trying to be heard. Now picture someone who stands quietly, observing, listening, and only speaking when they have something meaningful to add. Who do you think commands more attention? It's not the loudest voice, but the one that waits for the right moment to speak. Silence creates a sense of presence, of confidence. It says, I don't need to prove myself with words. My actions, my calm, my patience, they speak for me. So, how can you use silence to communicate more effectively in your own life? Start by practicing restraint. When emotions run high, resist the urge to fill the air with noise. Instead, let silence do the work. It gives you time to think, to respond rather than react. It also gives others the space to reflect, to feel heard, to connect with you on a deeper level. Silence isn't passive, it's an intentional act of strength. In a world that often values volume over substance, choosing silence can be a revolutionary act. It's a way of saying, I don't need to shout to be understood. And when you embrace that, you'll find that people can't ignore you, not because of what you say, but because of the quiet power you carry. Silence has a unique way of amplifying the things we often overlook, especially the blessings in our lives. When we step away from the noise, even for a moment, we create space to truly see and appreciate what we already have. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that silence wasn't just the absence of sound, it was a tool for reflection, a way to reconnect with what matters most. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." It's a reminder that joy isn't found in chasing more, but in recognizing the value of what's already here. So how can silence help us cultivate gratitude? Start by taking a few minutes each day to sit quietly and reflect. Without distractions, let your mind wander to the things you're thankful for, big or small. Maybe it's the warmth of sunlight streaming through your window, the comfort of a good meal, or the presence of someone who cares about you. The act of silently listing these things shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's abundant. It's a simple yet powerful exercise that grounds you in the present moment and helps you see life through a lens of appreciation. The Stoics often practiced this kind of reflection, not just as a habit but as a way of life. They knew that gratitude wasn't about ignoring challenges, it was about finding strength and contentment even in the midst of them. When we embrace silence, we give ourselves the chance to slow down, to notice, and to truly feel the weight of all we've been given. This isn't just about feeling good, it's about building resilience. Gratitude, rooted in moments of quiet reflection, becomes a source of inner peace and perspective. Try this today. Find a quiet space, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let your mind settle. Then silently name 3 things you're grateful for. Let the simplicity of this practice remind you that joy isn't always loud or flashy. It's often found in the quiet corners of our lives, waiting for us to notice. By making silence a regular part of your routine, you'll not only deepen your sense of gratitude, but also cultivate a mindset that's more resilient, more present, and more attuned to the beauty of the everyday. Silence, in the eyes of a Stoic, is far from empty. It's a tool, a refuge, and most importantly, an anchor. When the world around you is loud, chaotic, and unpredictable, silence becomes the steady force that keeps you grounded. The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw silence not as a lack of sound, but as a deliberate choice to remain centered, no matter what storms raged outside. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "The wise man is neither raised up by prosperity nor cast down by adversity." What he's pointing to here is the idea of inner stability. It's about finding a quiet core within yourself that doesn't waver, no matter how turbulent the external world becomes, and silence, in this sense, is the practice of returning to that core. It's the act of stepping back, observing, and refusing to be swept away by the chaos around you. Consider the story of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced immense challenges during his reign: wars, plagues, and political intrigue. Yet he remained calm and composed, often retreating into moments of silence to reflect and recenter himself. His journal, Meditations, is filled with reflections on the power of stillness and self-control. In one of his most famous passages, he writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Silence for Marcus was the key to accessing that power. But you don't have to be an emperor to see the value in this practice. Think about a time when you were caught in a heated argument or a stressful situation. What happens when you pause, take a deep breath, and choose not to react immediately? That moment of silence becomes your anchor. It gives you the space to respond rather than react, to act with intention rather than impulse. So, here's a question to reflect on. How can silence serve as your anchor in difficult moments? Imagine a situation where everything feels overwhelming: work, relationships, or even the noise of your own thoughts. What would it look like to step back, even for a moment, and simply be still? It's not about avoiding the chaos, it's about finding your center within it. And that's where the true power of silence lies. This is the Stoic anchor, a practice as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. In a world that constantly demands your attention, silence becomes not just a pause, but a profound act of strength. It's the quiet space where you regain control, where you remember that no matter what's happening around you, you always have the power to choose how you respond. Silence has a unique power, especially when it comes to making decisions. Think about it: how often do we rush to conclusions or react impulsively because we're surrounded by noise, both literal and mental? The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that silence wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a tool for clarity, a way to cut through the chaos and focus on what truly matters. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This simple yet profound advice reminds us that clear thinking begins with stillness. Without silence, we can't hear our own thoughts, let alone act with intention. Imagine this scenario: you're at work and a major problem arises. Everyone around you is panicking, throwing out ideas and talking over each other. The noise is overwhelming, but instead of joining the frenzy, you step back. You take a moment of silence away from the chatter. In that quiet space, you're able to think clearly, weigh your options, and make a decision that's not just reactive but thoughtful. That's the power of silence. It gives you the mental space to see the bigger picture, to separate what's urgent from what's important. This isn't just about avoiding distractions, it's about creating the conditions for better thinking. When you embrace silence, you're not just shutting out noise, you're inviting clarity. You're giving yourself the chance to reflect, to consider consequences, and to act with purpose. And this isn't just a modern idea. The Stoics practiced this centuries ago. They knew that a busy mind couldn't make wise decisions. Silence for them was a form of discipline, a way to train the mind to focus on what's within your control. Now take a moment to think about your own life. When was the last time you made a decision in complete silence, without the influence of external pressures or distractions? How might your choices change if you gave yourself that space? It's worth considering, isn't it? Because silence isn't just about what you don't say, it's about what you allow yourself to hear. And sometimes the most important voice you need to listen to is your own. Silence is not a weakness, it's a powerful tool, especially for leaders. Think about it: when someone speaks less, their words carry more weight. In Stoicism, this idea is deeply rooted in the concept of leading by example. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most respected Stoic leaders, once said, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." What he meant was that a true leader doesn't need to react to every situation with noise or emotion. Instead, they observe, reflect, and act with purpose and restraint. This kind of quiet authority commands respect because it shows confidence and control, not chaos. Take, for example, Nelson Mandela. During his years of imprisonment, Mandela rarely spoke out of turn or reacted impulsively. He chose his moments carefully, speaking only when his words would have the greatest impact. His silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. It communicated strength, patience, and an unwavering focus on his long-term vision. Those around him couldn't help but notice his calm demeanor, and it inspired them to follow his lead, even in the most challenging circumstances. Now, consider how this applies to your own life. Are there moments where you feel the need to fill the silence with words, perhaps to prove yourself or assert authority? What if instead you chose to listen more, speak less, and let your actions do the talking? Silence can be a form of leadership in itself, showing others that you're thoughtful, composed, and in control. It's not about being invisible, it's about being intentional. When you lead with silence, you create space for others to step forward, to think, and to grow. And in that space, true leadership thrives. So how can you start practicing this today? Begin by observing the moments where you instinctively react or speak. Pause, breathe. Ask yourself if your words are truly necessary or if your silence might say more. Over time, you'll find that this approach not only earns you respect, but also deepens your influence in ways words alone never could. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it's a doorway to understanding ourselves more deeply. When we step away from the noise of the world, even for a few moments, we create space for self-reflection. The Stoics knew this well. They believed that silence was a powerful tool for personal growth, a way to turn inward and examine our thoughts, actions, and desires. As Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to know himself." Silence, in many ways, is a form of adversity. It challenges us to sit with our own minds, to confront what we might otherwise avoid. Imagine this: you set aside 10 minutes at the end of your day, sitting in complete silence. No distractions, no screens, no tasks to complete, just you and your thoughts. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. Your mind might race, pulling you in a dozen directions. But as you settle into the stillness, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice patterns, thoughts that keep resurfacing, emotions you've been pushing aside, or even insights you hadn't considered before. This is where silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to you the parts of yourself that need attention, care, or change. The Stoics practiced daily introspection, a habit they called meditatio. It wasn't about overthinking or dwelling on mistakes, it was about honest self-assessment. They'd ask themselves questions like, did I act with virtue today? Where did I fall short? How can I improve tomorrow? This kind of reflection requires silence. It's in those quiet moments that we can truly listen to ourselves, free from the noise of external opinions or distractions. Here's a simple exercise to try. Find a quiet space, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. As you breathe in and out, let your thoughts come and go without judgment. If your mind starts to wander, gently guide it back to your breath. This isn't about emptying your mind, it's about observing it. Over time, this practice can help you become more aware of your inner world, your values, and the areas of your life that might need realignment. Silence, then, is more than just a pause, it's a teacher. It invites us to slow down, to listen, and to grow. By embracing it, we give ourselves the gift of self-discovery, and in that discovery, we find clarity, purpose, and the strength to live more intentionally. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed or disconnected, consider turning to silence. It might just be the quiet revolution your mind and soul have been waiting for. There's something profound about the way nature operates: quiet, unassuming, yet undeniably powerful. Think about a forest after a storm. The trees stand tall, their leaves glistening with rain, but there's no fanfare, no grand declaration of strength. It's a silent resilience, a quiet perseverance that mirrors the Stoic ideal of inner calm amidst chaos. This isn't just poetic imagery, it's a lesson in how to live. Nature, in its simplicity, teaches us to embrace silence as a form of strength, not weakness. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, often drew inspiration from the natural world. He wrote, "Look well into thyself, there is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look to nature." What he's pointing to here is the idea that nature doesn't overcomplicate things. It doesn't shout or demand attention. Instead, it embodies a kind of quiet wisdom, a steady, unwavering presence that reminds us of our own capacity for resilience. When we observe nature, we're not just seeing beauty, we're witnessing a masterclass in Stoic silence. Take a moment to imagine standing by a still lake at dawn. The water is so calm it reflects the sky perfectly, like a mirror. There's no rush, no noise, just the quiet assurance of the world unfolding as it should. In that stillness, there's a kind of peace that's hard to find in our busy lives. It's a reminder that silence isn't empty, it's full of potential, full of clarity. When we allow ourselves to sit with that kind of quiet, even for a moment, we start to understand how powerful it can be to simply be. This connection between Stoic silence and nature isn't just philosophical, it's practical. Think about how often we fill our lives with noise, the constant chatter of social media, the endless to-do lists, the pressure to always be doing something. But nature doesn't operate that way. It doesn't rush or panic. It grows, changes, and endures all in its own time. When we align ourselves with that rhythm, even briefly, we tap into a deeper sense of calm and purpose. So here's a question to consider. How can you bring this quiet wisdom of nature into your own life? Maybe it's taking a walk without your phone, sitting under a tree and just listening, or even pausing for a few deep breaths when the world feels overwhelming. These small acts of stillness aren't just breaks from the noise, they're invitations to reconnect with the Stoic silence that lives within all of us. Nature shows us the way. The question is, are we willing to listen? Silence has a unique power. It creates space between us and the chaos of our emotions. Think about it. When we're caught in the heat of an argument or overwhelmed by frustration, words often escape us in a rush, fueled by feelings we haven't fully processed. But silence acts as a pause button, giving us a moment to step back and observe our emotions without being consumed by them. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. The Stoics believed that emotions, while natural, shouldn't control us. Instead, we should strive to maintain inner calm, even in the face of turmoil. As Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Silence is one of the most effective tools we have to ensure our reactions are thoughtful, not impulsive. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you're in a tense meeting at work. A colleague criticizes your idea in front of everyone, and your first instinct is to defend yourself or fire back. But instead of speaking, you choose silence. You take a deep breath, allowing yourself a moment to process the situation. In that quiet space, you realize their criticism isn't personal, it's about the idea, not you. Suddenly, the emotional charge fades and you're able to respond calmly and constructively. This is emotional detachment in action. Silence gave you the clarity to see the situation for what it was, rather than how it felt in the moment. The Stoics would argue that this kind of detachment isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about not letting them dictate your actions. Silence helps us create that critical distance, allowing us to observe our feelings without being ruled by them. It's like stepping out of a storm and watching the rain from a sheltered spot. You're still aware of the storm, but you're no longer caught in its chaos. So here's a question to reflect on. When was the last time you felt overwhelmed by an emotion, and how might silence have helped you navigate it differently? Think about those moments when words felt like fuel to the fire, and consider how stepping back into silence could have changed the outcome. This isn't about ignoring your feelings, it's about giving yourself the time and space to respond, not react. Silence, when used intentionally, becomes a shield against emotional turbulence, helping us stay grounded in our values and purpose. Silence, often misunderstood as weakness, can be one of the most profound expressions of strength. When we choose to remain silent, especially in moments of conflict or judgment, we reveal a kind of vulnerability that is deeply human and deeply powerful. It takes courage to step back, to not retaliate, to not defend ourselves when the world expects us to. And yet, in that quiet space, we show something rare: authenticity. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca once said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage, but to live silently, to endure without complaint, to stand firm without needing to prove oneself, that too is a form of bravery." Think about it. When someone lashes out with anger or defensiveness, it often comes from a place of insecurity. But when someone chooses silence, it's not because they have nothing to say, it's because they have everything to say, and yet they choose not to. This restraint is a mark of inner strength, a quiet declaration that their worth isn't up for debate. Stoicism teaches us to embrace this vulnerability, not as a flaw, but as a gateway to true resilience. It's about understanding that our value isn't determined by how loudly we defend ourselves, but by how calmly we can hold our ground. Consider the story of Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most revered Stoic philosophers and a Roman emperor. Faced with relentless political intrigue and personal betrayals, he often chose silence over confrontation. Instead of engaging in petty arguments or seeking revenge, he focused on his own integrity and purpose. His silence wasn't passive, it was deliberate. It was a refusal to be drawn into the chaos around him, and in doing so, he earned not just respect but admiration. People could sense the authenticity in his quiet resolve, and that's what made him truly powerful. So, what does this mean for you? How can you embrace vulnerability through silence in your own life? Maybe it's choosing not to argue with someone who's trying to provoke you. Maybe it's letting go of the need to explain yourself when you know the truth. Or perhaps it's simply sitting with discomfort instead of rushing to fill the silence with words. These moments of quiet vulnerability can transform how others see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. They remind you that your strength doesn't come from external validation, but from the quiet confidence of knowing who you are. In a world that often equates volume with power, silence stands out. It's a subtle but undeniable force, a way of saying, "I don't need to prove anything." And that, more than anything, is what makes people take notice. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a powerful tool that can shape the way you're remembered. Think about it, the loudest voices in history often fade, but those who acted with quiet integrity tend to leave the deepest marks. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic thinkers, once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be one." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that actions, not words, are the true measure of a person's character. Silence, in this sense, isn't passive. It's a deliberate choice to let your deeds speak for you, to build a legacy that transcends the noise of fleeting opinions or empty promises. Consider the example of Rosa Parks. Her quiet defiance on that bus in Montgomery wasn't accompanied by grand speeches or loud declarations. It was her silent, steadfast refusal to move that sparked a movement and changed the course of history. Her legacy wasn't built on words but on the strength of her actions, a testament to how silence, when paired with conviction, can ripple through time. This is where Stoic philosophy offers a timeless lesson. The Stoics believed that a life of integrity is lived not in the spotlight but in the quiet moments of choosing what's right, even when no one is watching. Silence becomes a mirror of your values, a way to align your actions with your principles. It's not about being invisible, it's about being intentional. When you silence the urge to prove yourself, to defend your choices, or to seek validation, you create space for something far more enduring, a legacy rooted in authenticity. So, what does your silence say about you? How might the moments you choose not to speak, the times you let your actions lead, shape the way others remember you? These are questions worth reflecting on, not just for the sake of legacy, but for the sake of living a life that feels true to who you are. Silence, when wielded with purpose, becomes a quiet force that lingers long after the noise has faded. There's a profound power in silence that goes beyond just not speaking. It's about stillness, about creating space to accept what we cannot control. The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw silence not as a void, but as a tool for grounding ourselves in the face of life's inevitable challenges. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the idea of acceptance, accepting what we cannot change and focusing instead on how we respond to it. And silence, in many ways, is the first step toward that acceptance. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish, but wish for everything to happen as it does, and your life will go well." It's a simple yet radical idea. Instead of resisting what life throws at us, we can choose to accept it, and silence is often the bridge to that mindset. When we stop arguing with reality, stop complaining, and simply allow ourselves to be still, we create the mental space to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Imagine a scenario where someone receives unexpected news, a job loss, a health diagnosis, or a sudden change in a relationship. In that moment, the instinct might be to react immediately, to fight back, to resist. But what if instead they chose silence? What if they paused, took a breath, and allowed themselves to simply be present with the situation? That silence doesn't mean giving up. It means creating room to process, to accept, and then to act from a place of clarity rather than chaos. It's in that stillness that we often find the strength to move forward. Think about a time in your own life when you faced something you couldn't change. Maybe it was a missed opportunity, a loss, or a moment where things didn't go as planned. How did you respond? Did you resist, or did you find a way to accept it? Silence can be a powerful ally in those moments, not as a form of resignation, but as a way to step back, observe, and align yourself with reality. It's in that quiet acceptance that we often discover resilience we didn't know we had. So, the next time you're faced with something you can't control, consider the Stoic approach. Instead of rushing to react, try silence. Let it be your anchor, your way of saying, "This is what is." Now, how will I respond? Because in that stillness, you might just find the clarity and peace you need to move forward. Silence, often overlooked, holds a profound power to deepen our connections with others. Think about it. When words fade away, what remains is the space for genuine understanding, empathy, and presence. The Stoics, particularly Seneca, recognized this truth. He once wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage," but he also understood that sometimes to say nothing is an act of profound connection. In silence, we allow others to feel seen and heard, not through our words, but through our full attention and presence. Consider a moment when someone you care about was struggling. Maybe they were upset, overwhelmed, or simply lost in thought. What did you do? If you chose to sit with them in silence, offering no advice or solutions, just your quiet presence, you might have noticed something remarkable. That silence became a bridge, a way of saying, "I'm here with you no matter what." This is the essence of empathy, not fixing, not explaining, but simply being there. Stoic philosophy teaches us that true connection comes from understanding others, not from dominating conversations or proving points. Silence creates the space for that understanding to grow. It's in those quiet moments that we truly listen, not just to words, but to the emotions and intentions behind them. Imagine a friend sharing a difficult experience. Instead of jumping in with your own story or advice, you choose to stay silent, letting them express themselves fully. That silence communicates respect, patience, and care qualities that strengthen relationships far more than words ever could. Let me share an example. Picture two close friends sitting by a fire after a long day. One has just shared something deeply personal, something they've never told anyone else. The other doesn't respond with words, but simply sits quietly, maintaining eye contact, offering a nod of acknowledgement. That silence becomes a sanctuary, a safe space where vulnerability is met with acceptance. It's in moments like these that bonds are deepened, not by what is said, but by what is left unsaid. So, how can you use silence to connect more deeply with others? Start by practicing active listening. The next time someone speaks to you, resist the urge to fill every pause with your own thoughts. Instead, let the silence linger. Notice how it changes the dynamic, how it allows the other person to feel truly heard. Reflect on the Stoic idea that silence is not emptiness but a powerful tool for empathy and understanding. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of connection. When we embrace it, we open the door to deeper, more meaningful relationships grounded in mutual respect and genuine care. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a doorway to wisdom. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, understood this deeply. In his meditations, he wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." What he's pointing to is the profound truth that wisdom isn't something you chase outside yourself. It's already within you, waiting to be uncovered through quiet contemplation. Silence, in this sense, becomes a tool, a way to pause the chaos of the world and listen to the voice of your own mind. Think about it. How often do we truly allow ourselves to sit in stillness, free from distractions? In the Stoic tradition, silence is more than just not speaking. It's an active practice of tuning in. It's about creating space to reflect, to question, and to observe without judgment. When you step back from the noise, whether it's the chatter of others, the constant buzz of technology, or even your own racing thoughts, you start to see things more clearly. Patterns emerge, insights surface, and in that clarity, wisdom begins to grow. Here's a simple way to start. Set aside just 5 minutes a day for silent reading or meditation. It doesn't have to be complicated. Find a quiet corner, open a book of Stoic philosophy, or simply close your eyes and focus on your breath. The goal isn't to achieve some grand revelation in those moments, it's to create a habit of turning inward. Over time, you'll notice how these small pockets of silence help you untangle complex thoughts, make better decisions, and approach life with a calmer, wiser perspective. So, what might silence reveal to you? When you give yourself the gift of stillness, you're not just escaping the noise, you're creating a space where wisdom can flourish. And that's where true power lies, not in what you say, but in what you discover when you stop to listen. Silence, as we've explored, is far more than the absence of words. It's a deliberate choice, a tool of immense power. In Stoicism, it's a practice that allows us to step back, observe, and respond rather than react. It's not about retreating from the world, but about engaging with it from a place of inner strength and clarity. By embracing silence, we cultivate a sense of calm that others can't ignore. It's a quiet confidence that speaks volumes, drawing people in and commanding respect without the need for loudness or force. Think about it. When you choose silence in moments of conflict or chaos, you're not avoiding the issue, you're rising above it. You're showing that your peace isn't dependent on external circumstances. This kind of presence is magnetic. It's a reminder that true power often lies in restraint, in the ability to hold space without needing to fill it. Silence isn't weakness, it's a profound strength that can transform how you relate to others and how you see yourself. As Seneca once wrote, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And in the same way, sometimes to remain silent is an act of immense courage and wisdom. It's a declaration that you are in control of your emotions, your thoughts, and your responses. This quiet resolve can reshape your relationships, helping you connect more deeply with others and fostering a sense of trust and respect that words alone cannot achieve. But the impact of silence doesn't stop there. It also has the power to transform your inner world. When you practice silence, you create space for reflection, for understanding your own mind and emotions. It's in these moments of stillness that you can truly grow, gaining clarity about who you are and what you value most. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back your deepest truths and guiding you toward a more intentional way of living. So, as we wrap up, I encourage you to take this practice into your own life. Start small. Maybe it's pausing before responding in a heated moment or setting aside a few minutes each day to sit in quiet reflection. Notice how it changes the way you engage with the world and how others respond to you. And remember, silence isn't about disconnecting. It's about connecting more deeply, both with yourself and with those around you. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you. How has silence played a role in your life? Have you noticed its power in your relationships or inner growth? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. It's always inspiring to hear how these ideas resonate with you. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights on living with purpose and strength. Until next time, embrace the power of silence and let your quiet strength speak for itself.